The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we present excerpts from the Dermis Probe by Idries Shah. This audio has been made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. Anwar. I was present with Anwar Afifi, writes Iftikhari, when a visitor was announced. This man asked if he could be given success in a commercial venture. Afifi said to me, "Tell him of your experience." I said, "When I first entered this place, I asked Hazrat Anwar Afifi for my children to be obedient to me and carry out my wishes. When I arrived home, all my children were behaving in an exemplary manner. I caused them to be educated in the professions which I had chosen for them, and they invariably acquiesced. But within 6 years of taking up those vocations, each one of them had become poor or disgraced or was dead. After trying to settle my own affairs for some years, I returned here. Now I am enrolled in the caravan of Anwar Afifi. My question to him nowadays is always, 'Give me what I need and allow me to do what I can do.'" The visitor said, "What ridiculous talk is this? I came for help, and I get an invitation to join beggars." Anwar said, "We cannot, alas, give you that invitation, however hospitable we may wish to be. You came for help, but all we can give you is information. The kind of help you want is beyond our meagre store. The beggar can only give what he is allowed by others." Qualities. Hida once met a pious man and said to him, "What can I do for you?" The man said, "Do nothing for me, but on your travels help my disciples." Hida asked him, "How shall I know them?" "By their names," said the pious man, "which I shall give you." "We of the invisible world," said Hida, "do not recognize people by their names, but by their qualities." "There is no difficulty about that," said the pious man, "for I can list the qualities of my 3 disciples. The first is charitable, the second is abstemious, and the third is master of himself." Hida promised, saying, "It is in any case my duty, as a member of the invisible government, to aid such as those." Soon afterwards, Hida came across a man who was almost penniless, and saw him give his last coin to a deserving woman. But Hida passed by without helping him. Then he paused to watch a man who was lecturing people on abstention and praying for divine aid in his work. Hida did nothing for him. Finally, Hida saw a man jumping for joy at being alive, even though he had a terrible disability. Hida did not approach him. When Hida returned from his journey around the earth, he again met the first pious man, who said, "Did you encounter my disciples and help them?" Hida answered, "I had to help all the deserving people whom I met, but I did not see 3 worthy ones such as you mentioned to me." "Would you describe any whom you could not help?" asked the pious man. Hida told him about the 3. "But those are the men of whom I spoke," said the pious man. "If this is what you have taught them to do," said Hida, "you may be pious, but you are sadly astray. The first man was giving away money and enjoying the act, which therefore repaid him immediately in kind. He is not charitable. The second man was only abstemious in some things. He was greedy for conversion and divine favour, and did not abstain from that greed. The third man is master of certain things, but certainly not of himself." The people. It is the people who are God's family. Muhammad the Prophet. Anwar Abbasi. Anwar Abbasi was famous for his poetry and playing of the sitar. People went almost every evening to his home to listen to him. After the performances, some stayed behind to hear him on the subject of the Eastern philosophy, Hikmat-i Mashriqiyya. Those who went to visit him regarded Abbasi as the very exemplar of cultivation, and one whose unfailing courtesy was a model to be studied. When, however, he was invited out to other people's houses, he employed quite a different kind of behaviour. At house after house he would annoy distinguished guests. He appeared late, interrupted learned discourses, and challenged the opinions of at least one person at every gathering. One day he announced that his teaching mission was complete, and that he would thenceforward have no contact with people who wanted to learn. He left the country, and was never seen there again. Those who were perplexed at his behaviour went to Firoz Andaki, long known as his chief opponent, and asked for enlightenment. Firoz said, "You want me to criticize Abbasi, but I have to tell you that it is only recently that I have learnt how great a man he was. I regard him as my teacher, and I will tell you something of the grandeur of his teaching by example and demonstration, vast distances beyond our general level of comprehension." Abbasi cared so little for his reputation that he threw it away as fuel for the flame of his teaching. When he started arguments, 9 out of 10 people said, "How uncouth!" But the 10th said, "He is showing us all the absurdity of argument." In preference to establishing fame and respect among men, he established real teaching for those who could accept it. Poor greedy one, wherever he runs, he's after food, and death is after him. Sadi. You may be able to get the bone down your throat, but if it reaches your stomach, it will tear your navel. Gulistan. Learning without action is like wax without honey. Anwar-i Suhaili. Protection. It is related that someone said to Sal, "Many entirely worthy people oppose what you say and do. It has been said that this is because you do not compromise with them, and the progress of understanding of the Sufi path is hindered thereby. Would it be possible to ask for clarification of this?" Sal said, "The only way in which the people of the path can protect the way and the disciples from narrow thinkers and destructive elements is to become unacceptable to such people. A wild animal will leave you alone if it dislikes you, so you must cause aversion if you cannot otherwise protect yourself from it. So when people say, 'You have tried to explain yourself to me and have failed,' this may mean, 'Unknown to me, you have made me avoid you for the purpose of maintaining your own tranquility.' Even if false gold makes a man happy, at the mint it will be identified." Rumi. The Aristocrat. Imam Yusuf of Samarkand relates, "I studied the records of the miracles and the reputes of the Hashemite clan, and decided that it could not be accidental or entirely imagined that they contained such a frequent number of spiritually elevated men. Eventually I decided to approach Syed Nuri Shah-i Husseini, who lived in a glorious palace, surrounded by every luxury, and made my way to him. He admitted me to his company, but whenever I turned the conversation to his heritage as a guardian of the knowledge of the inner government, he changed the subject. At length I said to him, 'Lord of princes, your repute and attraction is based upon the well-known fact of your descent from the elect family. Why then will you never discuss this theme?' He said, 'You have tracked me down by means of my tracks. Are we still to discuss these marks on the snow or sand, or are you here to learn?' I was amazed by this thought, and immediately realized that he was right, and what others thought about this science was shallow. So I became bold enough to ask the other question which puzzled me. How can a master of spirituality live in such luxury when it is not traditional? He said, "Have you ever seen me take any advantage of the surroundings?" I said, "No, I have not." He said, "In that case, I can reveal to you, to be concealed until my death, that there are two forms of concealment: hiding oneself and living in an atmosphere which protects you by incongruity. Alone is the scissors of friendship. A man's own tongue may cut his throat. The cage has no value without the bird." Sadi. Unlucky. Call yourself unlucky only if you take up coffin making and people stop dying. Proverb. Grief and joy. They said to a dervish master, "You make yourself appear ridiculous to outward observers. This causes grief to your friends and joy to your opponents, who can easily represent you as a nonentity." He answered, "O friends born to attain felicity, you have seen half and think that you have seen all, and this is the last time that I shall explain. I look foolish to the people whom I wish to discourage. If my friends were real friends, they would seek this explanation and not feel grief. By causing joy to my opponents, I am giving them a chance to realize that their joy is misplaced and based on superficial assessment." The spirit is the mirror, the body is the rust. Divani Shamsi Tabriz. No effort makes a black crow into a white hawk. Anwar-e Suhaili. The Magician. There was once a man who travelled all over the world and studied in every place of real learning. Because of his retiring ways, opinions were for long divided as to whether he was a devout and worthy man, or whether perhaps he was some kind of magician, alchemist, or even astrologer, a follower of reprehensible arts. Consequently, his house was besieged by two kinds of people: those who sought his blessing if he were to be revealed as a man of learning, and those who wanted to enlist his aid in some mundane enterprise, should they discover that he was possessed of secret arts. This man, known by the name of Abdul Wahid, son of Aswad, eventually acquired the repute of a sorcerer and necromancer. The consequence was that people who imagined that they were sincere and praiseworthy shunned him. Those who sought the help of a sorcerer continued to seek him out. When, however, the potential magicians and buyers of talismans and charms entered his presence, he soon sent them away. He did this by convincing them that he only pretended to be a magician. In this way he was able to shed them more rapidly and completely than would otherwise have been possible. Hence to his ordinary repute of magical activity was added the charge, spread by the disappointed, of charlatanism, even in that doubtful vocation. This man was in fact a Sufi. He discouraged the passionate believers in their own sincerity, because such people are almost always only superficially sincere. Their reality is self-deception, and they are more difficult to help than those who have no such prejudice in their own favour. Their belief was stronger than their sincerity. Ibn Aswad's beneficent influence and the results of his work continue. But because of his methods of self-concealment and self-defence, few Sufis may now mention the debt which everyone in the world owes to Abdul Wahid, son of Aswad. Much smoke has been seen, and caused great fear of fire, even when no fire ensued. Proverb. Opportunity's precious, and time is a sword. Sadi. podcast is copyright 2016, the Idries Shah Foundation.